Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
This is issue number 120. Isaiah Bradley, as selected by Ruby, our present level patron, and she put this one on the list sometime around the start of the Falcon and Winter Soldier, which just wrapped up last week. If you caught our John Walker episode, a fascinating and insightful pick and episode. And just based on what we've been working on for this one, I envision this episode is going to be no different.
Yeah, I mean, the John
Probably
Walker...
even heavier hitting.
I was going to say, the John Walker one was an episode that turned heavy. This one is heavy from the start.
Yes. So before we get into all of the heaviness, let's just take a quick moment to say a couple of quick things. First off, we have a brand new patron, Brittany. She's a mayor level patron, so thank you, Brittany. You can be cool like Brittany and go to patreon.com/capes on the couch and subscribe at the 135 and I was going to say the 135, the $10 levels are all sold out, but the $1, $3, and $5 levels, and continue to support us and get awesome exclusive content and some stickers. So thank you and shout out to Brittany. Maybe one day we'll be like Chapo Trap House and earn $170,000 a month, but we're not there yet. Also, podcast shout out to our friends Mouse and Weens. Julianne and Joelle are two sisters with very different lives, but they have a fun conversational podcast, all manner of topics. They talk about mental health, their sex lives, parenting, a whole slew of other things. So they're at mouseandweens.com, WEENS. Their nicknames, they tell it much better than I do. And last call for reviews for good on podchaser.com. This is you have the last couple of days to get that in. Every review left on our Podchaser page, they will donate 25 cents to Meals on Wheels COVID-19 Relief Fund. If we respond, they will double that to 50 cents. And because we are a Libsyn hosted podcast, Libsyn will match all of those donations. So you can leave an awesome review, like our friends over at GeekPeak, who left us this fantastic 5-star review. Ever wonder if your favorite comic book character needed therapy? The answer to that question is most likely yes. Looking at you, Batman. Capes on the Couch covers the mental health component of your favorite caped crusaders and views your favorite comics through the lens of psychology. Can't overstate how unique and well-researched this show is. There are a lot of comic book podcasts out there, but none like this. Thank you to GeekPeak Pod. And you can check them out as well, GeekPeak, P-E-A-K. They're available, obviously, wherever you can find podcasts. So go on podchaser.com, do a search for Capes on the Couch, and leave us a nice review. And then if you do that and send us a screen cap of that rating and review, along with your physical address, we will send you a sticker as a way to say thank you. So we got all the fun out of the way. It's not going to be a whole lot of levity from here on out. Sad to say. Isaiah Bradley, created by Robert Morales, Kyle Baker, and Axel Alonso in Truth, Red, White, and Black, #1, January of 2003. This is a 7-part story that was conceived by Bill Jemas, who was a writer for Marvel, and said, sort of just offhandedly, hey, what would happen if you made a black guy Captain America? And so Robert Morales and Axel Alonso took that nugget of an idea and they crafted this incredible story. And with the art of Kyle Baker, we'll get to the artwork in a little bit, they wrote this story, which was basically an allegory on the Tuskegee Syphilis study, which is, I know, Doc, it's, as a Black physician, has got to be one of the hardest, most difficult things for you to discuss and to think about.
Yeah, I mean, I'll make this super brief because sometimes the details get lost. But the whole point is it was a longitudinal study. There was a control group and there was a quote unquote experimental group. It was not experimental by somehow, I have heard people tell me this. No, no one was injected with syphilis or anything of the sort. It was that there were people that had syphilis and they were never treated for it, but they were seen by healthcare providers. And the idea, without getting into the other details, that they lived their whole lives this way is part of why we have internal review boards and many of the other things that allow for safeguards in healthcare studies. So it's a black mark on medicine as a whole. It's a black mark.
No pun intended.
It's just a horrible thing. That's the bottom line. So, yeah.
And it's unfortunately led to a justifiable amount of distrust in the Black community when it comes to medical professionals. I know we're seeing that now with the COVID-19 vaccine. And I've read a great deal of things. And again, I'm really aware of my privilege here, and I'm really trying to do my best to not speak out of line on these sorts of things. This entire episode is basically me really doing my level best to not speak out of line or out of place.
Don't worry, we're here for the ride together. And in all honesty, at this point, the backlash from the Tuskegee study, it's really faded in the sense that is not the biggest concern at this point. It's more like just getting regular information and access to people that need it, even in the age of the internet. That's a much bigger issue now if you want to talk about reasons why there's vaccine hesitancy. But I already have been on panels about that, and I'm going to do another one. We're recording this on a Sunday night. I'm going to be doing that tomorrow again. So that's okay. I'll leave the rest of that there.
Fair enough. So in the story, Isaiah Bradley is drafted into the Army after Pearl Harbor is bombed, leaving behind his pregnant newlywed wife, Faith. He's serving in an all-black platoon in Camp Cathcart, and the men are subjected to experimentation in an effort to recreate the super soldier serum. 300 black soldiers are injected. 5 survive, including Isaiah. Each of them has increased strength and endurance. Unfortunately, between battles and the lingering effects of the serum, only Isaiah is left a short time later. And so I'm not going to get into all of the details, although it is not really a long story. He steals Steve Rogers' costume and another shield, not the circular shield that Steve is known for, but more of the like, if you know Steve Rogers' original shield, if you know Captain Rogers' original triangular-esque shield, that's what Isaiah has. And he basically goes on a suicide mission to a concentration camp to end the German experiments, because the Germans are continuing this effort as well. Apparently, this project existed before the war completely broke out, and it was a joint effort between US, British, and German scientists. Once the war happened, they split off, and so the US and British were doing Project Rebirth, and the Germans were continuing to do this. And so he broke into this camp to end the German experiments. He's captured, and he's brought before Der Fuhrer. He's brought before Hitler himself, who decides to hand him over to Goebbels for experimentation to see if they can use his body to help recreate the serum.
So just to add a little bit to that, he actually is fully restrained, but has a conversation with Hitler, and Hitler is trying to get him to agree to whatever it is that they're looking to do, if he can join him, et cetera, trying to play up the point, we're not against you. You're not really the target of this war, and you are considered, one of the lucky ones right now. So his whole point was to try and turn him. And for all of the heady stuff that I know we're going to talk about, I loved Isaiah's response to why he wasn't going to join them. It wasn't anything larger. It wasn't about race. It wasn't about nationalism. It wasn't, it wasn't any of that. It was, my wife would kill me.
Yeah, that is true. So he's rescued by German insurgents, but when he returns to his base, he's court-martialed for insubordination and imprisoned because he wasn't supposed to go and do that. And also, the experiments that they ran on him were not on the books. So he gets pardoned by Eisenhower in 1960, but by this point, unfortunately, the serum has left him sterile and brain damaged. And so Steve Rogers discovers the truth about this program in 2003 and visits Isaiah in an effort to reconcile with him. And it's later revealed that while he was imprisoned, his cells were used in an effort to create another super soldier. And after 39 attempts, Josiah X was born, and Josiah joins the Crew, which is a group of Black superheroes written a couple years after this storyline. And then he also has a grandson, Elijah Bradley, who calls himself Patriot and joins the Young Avengers. And he initially tells everybody, oh yeah, I have my grandfather's superpowers. It turns out he actually injected himself with mutant growth hormone, which was illegal. And I think then he gets his grandfather's blood somehow, or something happens, and then he comes about his powers in a more quote unquote legitimate fashion. And then I was talking to Doc about this before we started recording. One really cool moment was where Isaiah is brought as a guest to the wedding of Storm and T'Challa, and all of the Black superheroes crowd around him, and they are in complete awe of him as he's being sort of like wheeled in on a wheelchair. And Luke Cage is explaining to, I think it's Wolverine. I think this is who Wolverine's having the conversation with, because Wolverine is like, who is that? And Luke Cage says, he's the first me.
Yeah.
Which is just a beautifully succinct way to describe.
Yeah.
And I mean, it obviously downplays a lot of the stuff, but just the idea of Isaiah being the first Black super soldier. So there's not a lot of episode or issues that he's in. You know, it's this 7-issue run, and then he's referenced a little bit here and there, mostly through the context of either Josiah X or Elijah.
Right.
But because he's sterile and he has at this point the mental intellect and aptitude of a child, there's not a ton you can do with him storytelling wise.
Yeah.
So, so we're going to get into the issues here. And this is one of the biggest things that Doc and I were trying to figure out how to go about this is Isaiah is a blank slate in this story. You know, looking at the 7-issue run, Isaiah as a character is, and I said this, to Doc again in prep for this, I said, Isaiah is unfortunately the least interesting part of the story in terms of who he is himself. All of the commentary and all of the really interesting stuff happens to him or happens as a result of what he does. It is not because of who he is as a person. And again, I'm trying not to speak out of turn here, but reading this as a white man, I understand that there's a whole litany of things that I will never understand about the Black experience. And I absolutely get that. But reading the book and reading the story and seeing the characterization and everything that Isaiah does, the story happens around him and because of him, but not through him, if that makes sense.
Well, I think that also goes to the type of writing that was being done. And this is something that, based on the books, not the TV show, but Game of Thrones, George R.R. Martin, he is a world builder. And we've had interviews with people that we understand are world builders and then can create these characters with enormous backstories within a larger world. In this case, because it was such a short run, they got the world built. And they didn't necessarily need one particular character to do it. It's the fact that he was the last man standing. And that just happened to be the circumstance. It just so happens, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, that a few of the other soldiers had, in my opinion, much more robust backstories that could have made for compelling back and forth if you don't go through the path that they end up losing their minds and whatnot. But I'm not sure that tells the same story. And what I mean by that is this was a man who was relatively young, who didn't have the opportunity to look at his life in any other view. Yes, he has a young wife, and we learn about his wife and what she accomplishes. She does a lot for herself, and she's able to tell us things that there's no way he could have. And that's amazing to see. We get the interactions that he has with others, but in such a short and limited scope, yet know that he happens to enjoy certain things. He happens to like comics. He happens to just want to do the right thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. And the idea that I'm going to flesh it out a little bit, because part of what's going on with his wife is they're experiencing, I think, what is it? The expo, like the New York Expo. It's like,
it's the World's Fair.
Yeah, it's the World's Fair. But the point is, it's the time that blacks can experience the World's Fair. It's their designated time. And even then they're getting crapped on for it. So
yes, I did neglect to mention that, but it's at the very beginning of the story. They're like, oh, hey, we want to check this out. And the guy's like, I can't let you in. And he's like, why not? And he's like, you're going to make me do this?
Right. And the whole point, though, is that that's meant to be seen as this is the way things are. This is the norm. This is the normal world. It's not meant to be strictly for comics. And unfortunately, that does mean that people are going to get stilted in certain forms of development because society won't allow for it. In this case,
well, you said, I had to cut you up, but you were talking about world building, and you said, oh, that the world is built because it's our world. I mean, aside from super soldier stuff notwithstanding, everything that happens in this story in the time that it happened was obviously, aside from being meticulously researched, but real. This shit happened. All of this stuff was legit.
And I appreciate the fervor that you're showing for this type of content. And it makes me feel better about talking about this, because my fear is part of the reason why I'm saying the things I'm saying right now is because I know that there is a subset, and I've hinted at it for a long time. I don't know how large this subset is that are either in ignorance or in denial. And either way, if this is their exposure to this, then I don't want to ignore that. So,
well, when I was telling my wife about this and I was explaining the Tuskegee study, she didn't know about that either. And so she's like, wait, so they did what? And I said, yeah. She didn't, until recently, she didn't know about COINTELPRO. Mm-hmm. She didn't know about all that stuff. We watched Judas and the Black Messiah, and she was like gobsmacked that in the middle of this, she's like, the government did this? I go, babe, if I were to sit down and tell you the ways in which the government has screwed over the black community over the last, 200 plus years, Thea would be graduating college and you still wouldn't know a tenth of the stuff.
So from that standpoint, though, they do a good job in this story of demonstrating how someone like Isaiah, who is not meant to be an important person, and I'm not saying that as a denigration of him as a character, I'm saying he is a private. He is not high in the military. He is not anyone of particular status outside of the military, which is interesting because some of the other characters that are in his troop actually are. One is a high status individual outside of the military, and his family is shocked when they find out that he died. You have the sergeant who has a huge backstory within the military of the things that he went through. We don't get all of it, but we get enough to know that this man has gone through some stuff. And all of those things. And meanwhile, even the way other characters do interact with him within his own quote unquote accepted community, he's not exactly beloved. He's accepted because they have that one shared common experience right now. It's not as if they're saying like, oh man, we really got to make sure this guy does great. He's got so much potential. No one says that. Not at all. He happened to be one of the people that survived along with that group. And they're like, well, I guess we're together now. So they have to go ahead and just make sure that we all get through. And yet, how is it that he's the only one? Here's the other thing that really can be painful, that it was random chance. It's not as if he was the chosen one, the selected one, or anything like that, as many of these stories are wont to do. I did a little bit of background, and one of the original stories kicked around was that classic, here's a scientist that experiments on himself, creates something similar to
the original super soldier serum and there's some sort of correspondence, et cetera, but it gets violated by the war and the government and all that stuff. So a much different take where you would see much more agency maybe that got corrupted. They didn't go that route, and I'm glad they didn't, because that doesn't speak to nearly as many people. Anybody that's been drafted, forget the race part, anybody that's been drafted, and we did the military stuff last week, I get it. And you can picture someone being in a circumstance where they know they don't have all the information, but they know that this is the only way they're going to survive, and having to just endure. Each day itself is its own challenge. Can you imagine the anxiety? Can you imagine the depression? All of those things that go along with it. And yet, because this is a life and death literal situation, you don't get those choices. So now you just have to push all of that to the wayside. Who knows how that comes out later? And many of the other characters, we see it come out immediately. We see it in the rage. We see it sometimes with jealousy. We see it sometimes with just this. At one point, one particular character, and I apologize for not remembering the name, you could tell he actually revels in the violence, and that creates its own problems. So all of it. Then throw on top of that the overt racism. That's something that I admit, even to this day, I'll never pretend to totally understand because I wasn't in that era. But stories like this remind me, and not that I needed much reminding, but it does remind me that those things happened in a way that I'm grateful I haven't experienced at that level. I still get the name calling sometimes. I still get the things where I wonder, is it meant to be racist? And I get sometimes just really overt racist shit. Pardon my language. But the idea that that's your everyday experience, that's something that makes it very difficult for me to imagine. And I think it is something that creates a generational feel that if authors don't take the time to bring up once in a while, sometimes to the chagrin of a lot of people that just don't want to hear about it, then there's a risk that it gets lost. So I'll admit, Isaiah comes across as very flat as written, but that doesn't mean he's not iconic. And I think we'll be able to get into that in a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. The story is one that absolutely needed to be told and is done in such a fantastic way. And it's honestly a credit to Robert Morales that he's able to write the story and do it and tell it in such a way, in spite of, and perhaps because Isaiah is the blank slate. I don't know that you would be able to tell the story about everything else. And I think maybe that's why he's written the way that he is. If again, I can, speak as best I can, analyzing this just on the face of the story. If Isaiah were potentially a more three-dimensional or more fascinating character, it would detract your focus away from everything else in the story. I think the point of the story is all of the stuff that happens to Isaiah, and the point and the focus of the story needs to be on the allegory for the syphilis study. And if Isaiah were a more fascinating character, you'd be focusing on him and not what you need to be focusing on.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I'm just going to shout out in the chat, my sister just brings it home so well.
Mm-hmm.
Evening
I was surprised that Isaiah's storyline was included. I'm sorry, you were reading.
Yeah, it was important to see this as we watch, obviously referring to, Captain Falcon and Winter Soldier. We had a difficult conversation with our son regarding this country's history with legally and medically abusing Black and brown and the underprivileged. And just to bring it to something that I know you wanted to bring up, Anthony, and I'll admit I might be hot-shotting here. That's not my intention. The artwork for this book, for the comics, it's typical of that part of that artist. I'm not a huge fan of that style usually, but I think it does a good job because when you first start out, each of the African American characters has their own look. But as they get experimented on and as they survive, and they do have the group shots of them after the few of them that have survived and everything else, they all start to look very similar. And I think that idea of that they were basically stripped of what their personalities were for the sake of whatever the larger agenda was. That's something that is incredibly common when you look at the history of many underprivileged people, underprivileged cultures, not just in the United States, but all over the world. If you have a purpose, then you have the only thing that's worthy in your life from the outside looking in. That's a horrific way to view other people. And yet, that is something that is centuries old. And once again, that's not just to this country. That predates this country. That predates a lot of modern civilizations, or what we like to call modern civilizations, including our own, and not just by race. How is it that we get to celebrate 100 years of women being able to vote? This is within lifetimes, people.
You look at the caste system within India. You look at apartheid, in South Africa. You look at the way that indigenous peoples were treated in Australia. You look at the way indigenous peoples are treated in this country. You look at the way certain populations are treated in Asia and, in China, and just the hierarchy it hurts me,
Yeah. The whole point is, this is the weight of the everyman. That is what Isaiah is carrying. He's carrying the weight of the everyman. And he, because of a random chance, took full advantage of that opportunity. And we're gonna be able to transition into the next point. But I'll let you do your job, Anthony.
No, I was going to say, just from the art standpoint, that I've spoken. Our patrons who listen to the trade paperback reviews know that I'm very big on artwork. This was absolutely not my favorite art. If I were to rate this art on the typical 1 to 10 scale, I would give this about a 4. It reminded me of Bob Camp. And for those of you that don't know, Bob Camp was one of the feature illustrators and animators for Ren and Stimpy. The faces and the expressions that he was using for certain people, Private Merritt, the horrifically racist soldier, reminded me in the older, the older version of Private Merritt, reminded me of George Licker.
Yeah.
Who, if Ren and Stimpy was the irascible elderly gentleman with liver spots and things of that nature, kind of had that take to it. Now, I do understand and sort of agree with Doc's point about how everybody, the 5 soldiers that survived the process, all did have very distinct body shapes and expressions and things of that nature. And once they became injected with the serum, they all sort of became this large, roided up, character, and they lost that individuality, which is itself a metaphor. But again, I just thought this was far too cartoony. And I understand that they did want to bring on, obviously a Black artist. Kyle Baker is a very big name and has a large portfolio in comics. But it's just, I would have liked to see somebody with maybe less cartoony. I would love to reread this story with different art, but, the same layouts and everything, same thing happens, just maybe less cartoonish, because to me, again, it detracted from the seriousness of the story.
So what I'm about to say is not necessarily the way I view it, but I think we should take the opportunity then to point out that style, in a way, maybe not intentionally, but ends up becoming a pastiche of what sometimes would be portrayed in Black culture in terms of some exaggerated features and other things that, depending on who was doing it, portrayed a different emotional tone to it. So in other words, it can either be a celebration of just being really unique and sort of carefree, or it can be a mockery. And clearly this is not a mockery, and in no way does it come across. If you read any of it, it's not a mockery.
Not at all.
But so from that standpoint, I actually do appreciate that style for this particular story, but I'm also going to bring something up that I wish I hadn't done a dive on. And that was the very first cover of issue number 1. It's a black silhouette, and you could tell it's meant to be the typical patriotic backdrop and referencing Captain America, but apparently there was a huge backlash towards it. And the idea that somehow this was going to taint the legacy of Captain America. And once again, when those types of things come up, it's like, well, taint what? What could people possibly be referencing? And me and my naivete, I would think, oh, well, they must be talking about the timeline because this is after Pearl Harbor. And, we know when Captain America really originated and all of that. But you continue to read the issues and it's like, oh, well, they folded that in and explained perfectly. And so, yeah, it fits in just fine. So it can't be that. And then I looked in a couple of forums that maybe I shouldn't have. And I realized, oh, okay, never mind. I know exactly what it is. And I didn't want to deject myself too much. But overall, when people got the entire story, people got it. And I respect that. So I don't want to make it sound like that was everyone. It was a very small subset. But to say that art can lead to some very charged responses, like visceral responses, I think that's important to say from a mental health standpoint. What does it say about you that when you see an original cover of something, that it invokes emotion? It's okay to be excited about something. It's okay to dislike something. There's nothing wrong with any of that. But if it starts to get to the point where you think it says something truly tonal and moral or anything of the sort without giving context, you may need to investigate that about yourself. Just saying.
Absolutely. So moving into the second issue, as it were, then, and this is something that you brought up, you typed it into our show notes. So I honestly am not 100% certain what you mean by this. When a monolith truly is a monolith. And I have an idea because obviously I understand the notion that Black people are not a monolith. And, as a political science person, I read that all the time, that the Black voting community is not dissected nearly to the extent that white voters are broken down. They're broken down by age, gender, socioeconomic status, education status, this, that, and the other. And then for Black voters, it's Black men and Black women. End of story. There's no further parsing of Black community voting wise. And like I said, as a poli-sci person, and I know Matt is in our chat, and Matt is even more of a political junkie than I am. And I know he knows exactly what I'm talking about. This idea that when it comes to the Black voting bloc, that it's a monolith. But I'll let you get into sort of the issues here with what you meant by that.
Sure. I don't mean this as narcissistic as it sounds. There are some people that truly are as representative and as great as they're supposed to be. Many of them have died, in theory, before their time. Martin Luther King was assassinated. Mahatma Gandhi was shot. People that, in theory, are trying to invoke change and do good in the world, ironically, often in a peaceful nature, that end up in situations that they didn't expect. Nelson Mandela being imprisoned for so long. All of those things. I apologize if my voice is changing a little bit. I'll admit this is a kind of an emotional thing for me, but I digress. What Isaiah ends up doing, where he is thrown to the wolves, it's already been determined and said in the story, no one else has survived. No one's supposed to even know that this experiment existed. So we're going to send him out. Well, before anyone could give him those marching orders, he took it upon himself because he came to that conclusion as well. And the idea of what he experienced in that short part of the story, which is really only a few pages. This is not that long. He gets the costume, goes out. That's the cliffhanger. He goes in, beats some people up, discovers way more than he ever imagined in terms of bodies, in terms of other experimentation. People that, because they don't speak his language, now view him as a threat, but he wants to save them. They reference the gas chambers, and he survives it only because of his own strength with the super serum. He gets courted by Hitler, to say nothing less. So at this point, in such a short period of time, he saw so many things, and the fact that he was rescued meant that he did a lot of good. And the idea that because he did good in a way that people didn't expect, it destroys his life. He doesn't get to have the life that no one else is going to. But because of him, many people are going to be able to have that life. What I'm referencing is that despite all the things that have happened to him, and ultimately him losing his mental faculties and all of that, he's able to be cared for by his wife. And in the story, it's that so many people... Sorry.
Take your time, bro.
Is that so many people, celebrities, especially the Black community, and I love just the picture, just all of the pictures on the wall. Anybody that knows him and they know they can't talk about it with anybody else, this is just for them. This is what he means to all of them. I know he's a fictional character, but even reading this, he started to mean that to me. And from that standpoint, it's the idea that even when you have nothing, or people think you have nothing, and you can still do the most amazing things in the world, and nobody ever even has to know about it. You could end up being that one inspiration for someone else that they never knew they had. And I will admit this, that I've had patients tell me to my face that I'm the only Black doctor, let alone psychiatrist, that they've ever seen, despite the fact that I graduated with plenty of Black doctors, and I know more Black psychiatrists. And yet, for them, I'm the only example in the world. So that part, I'll admit, hits a little heavy sometimes. And I don't think about it because I actually don't want attention. I don't want people to pay attention to me. And I, for some reason, resonate very heavily with Isaiah on that point. It's not that he didn't want attention. I know I'm bastardizing it, and I apologize as a human being. But the idea that someone said to Captain America, you don't know the Black Captain America, and he actually found out for himself. He didn't have to wait on anybody else. He took that time. That reminds me when people say, you don't know about Black Wall Street? You didn't know what was going on in Tulsa before it got burnt to the ground? You don't know what was going on in the Carolinas? You don't know about the idea of there, and this term people may not know about, the idea that you have air property, meaning air, H-E-I-R, that, believe it or not, in the South, there are plenty of Black families. That's the only reason they had land, because it was granted to them through the Homestead Act. And it's still being taken away to this day, and people don't know about it. There are so many things that people have done over the years that have been so positive. But if they speak out about it too much, it's the tall poppy syndrome. They know they're going to be struck down. But they can be those heroes that we don't talk about nearly as much as we should. And it could be on the local level. It could be in neighborhoods. And it doesn't have to be about race. It doesn't have to be about. But if you ever notice that there's someone and you hear their story and you feel like it speaks to you, then there's nothing wrong with embracing it and letting it be a guiding light. Because some people, depending on how bad their depression is, that may be all they have left. And if that's what you're holding on to, then please keep holding on until there are other means, because they are still out.
And I would also add, if you find that person, if you have someone who serves as that inspiration to you, who serves as that beacon, tell them, let them know, because sometimes they need to hear that.
Yeah.
Because they may not be aware. Now somebody like Isaiah, yes, it was so beautiful and moving when Steve Rogers showed up at the house, because Steve found out through the racist soldier that this was happening. And he's like, I had no idea about this. I would have shut that down in an instant had I known. And he goes to Isaiah's house, and Faith meets him at the door. And she says, you don't have to do this. And he's like, no, but I want to. And she's like, he's basically mentally a child. And Steve goes, I need to do this. And while Faith is going to get him, he's looking on the wall and he sees everybody came to visit him. Richard Pryor, Muhammad Ali, just the litany of celebrities, overwhelmingly Black, not all of them Black, but overwhelmingly Black, that came to visit and pay their respects because they heard the story. And Faith says to Steve, and to basically anybody who shows up, you can't stay here for long because I know they're watching the house. So if you're in for a few minutes, they'll just think that, okay, you're coming to pay your respects to him.
Yeah.
And then that's that. And that alone broke my heart, that you're not allowed to stay and spend time. And his story can't be told. And that was something that was done very well in the show, in the series. Mild spoilers, I apologize, for Falcon Winter Soldier. But saying to Sam, don't tell people, because I've managed to survive now because they think I'm dead and nobody knows who I am. And if my story got out, I'd be dead by the end of the day. And I think in some ways that's reflected in the comics as well. This notion that they can come and the Black community can pay their respects fleetingly, but his story can't be told publicly because something would happen. Something would happen to him, or something would happen to Faith, or his daughter, or his grandson. Something would happen to them, and they can't have that. So they have to sit with this knowledge of all that he has done, and worse, all that was done to him. And they have to keep quiet about it because that's the only way they survive.
Well said. Well, just yeah, that's it.
It's ridiculous. It's because it's so, that's why this story resonates, because I said it before, this happens. It has happened. It continues to happen to this very day. There are two sets of justice in this country. There's one for me and there's one for Doc. And it should not be that way. I know it's naivete, and I know it's pie in the sky thinking, but God damn it, it doesn't mean that I can't get angry about it.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I do. And you know I do.
I know. So we're gonna take a break. And when we'll get back, we will get into treatment, whatever that can theoretically look like. So stay tuned. We're going to catch our breath, and you should as well.
I am Connor from the House of L.
And I am Ray from the House of Zod.
We are two of the many survivors of Krypton's destruction, and we have made our home in Australia, and dare I say, have become Australians, for better or worse. But we have also decided to read Superman comics, read Superman books, watch Superman shows, cartoons, movies, basically everything Superman, and from an Australian perspective as well. Whether you're a seasoned fan, like me,
Or whether you are coming in fresh, wide-eyed and wanting to learn more like me, then this podcast is for you. Join us for our bi-weekly adventures available on all good podcast catchers.
so just search for Last Sons of Krypton, a Superman podcast. We'll be coming to you from Australia or some cosmic dimension, wherever we are that week.
Up, and away.
Well, hello there. I'm Brian Wayne, host of the Cheers to Comics podcast, and I'm here to bring you the ultimate comic book podcast for readers and lovers and collectors of all levels. Whether you're trying to get caught up on last week's books or you're just looking to check out the latest interview with the latest creator, this is the podcast for you. So, if you're looking for a comic book show that doesn't stray away from the topic and you're looking to get an insight from a true fan and lover of this industry, then tune into the Cheers to Comics podcast 3 times a week as I, Brian Wayne, raise a glass to this wonderful, wonderful industry that is comics. Cheers.
Hi, I'm Howard Mackey, and this is Capes on the Couch.
Welcome back. So, treatment in universe, out of universe. I don't know. I don't know what you say here. Because again, Isaiah's not the problem.
Right. But offering support, it can be a help. And I don't even know.
I think, maybe Faith is the one who needs the support and the help for having to care for.
Yeah. This is where I'm a listening ear. I try to, well, if we're going to do in-universe, if we're going to do comics, I mean, even the official person that's with Captain America, when he's talking to Merritt, he gives a history lesson that is a hoot and a half in terms of just talking about the Afro-German experience and what that meant. And a few other angles that clearly we don't have time to get into. But the idea that you can now bridge the gap and find ways to start having some very difficult conversations with some maturity, I think that's the place to start. And the idea that Steve Rogers is already trying to bridge that gap, I'm not so much a psychiatrist in that standpoint. I'm basically I don't even know what to call it, a negotiator, someone leading a round table. Like, that's really the way I'd be thinking about it. This isn't just about individual mental health concerns for one person. Now we're talking social determinants. Now we're talking, what do we do to really start finding a way where you have people that are superpowered and wanting to right a wrong? How do we go about that? And if that's what I need to do, I think that may be my bigger focus, which is not what I usually do in our world. So I might look to do something like that. I don't care if it's through S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't care if it's through any other avenue. Whatever could be done with me as one of the voices for it, I'd gladly jump on that. Because I think that's the point. The tide has turned. Because if we're talking about when there would have been an opportunity from a one-on-one standpoint to help someone like Isaiah, let's be honest, I'm probably just looked at as someone else that's possibly expendable and just maybe a fodder, if not from the physical experimentation, maybe on the mental side. I don't know. But I'm not that stupid or naive to think that I would have escaped any of those things. And this is taking a turn that I don't want it to. So,
all right.
Man.
Take a breath.
Yep.
The show is not scripted, folks. We have a game plan, but after 120 issues, things can go where they go. And yeah, that's the unfortunate reality. Is that in universe you would have been looked at no differently than him, which is, again, just a crime. But out of universe, then I would say analogous to the survivors of the Tuskegee experiment. That's the best. Obviously, I mean, that's clearly the allegory for the story that they were going for.
Right. And you can also do some research where there are a lot of African-American physicians especially, but physicians as a whole. We've been using that too much as a crutch as an excuse as to why there is hesitancy with treatment for different things. I touched on it earlier, but now I'm going to dig in. That was the original point. And yes, that still stands, and it's horrible in every way. But there still is this overarching idea that it's an equitable playing field, and therefore, if people just open their minds, then we're going to start seeing the same outcomes. And that's simply not the case. If you haven't included a huge section of the population with regards to clinical trials, with regards to ongoing access and information, then why are you surprised that in the Black and brown communities, you're not getting the same results when it comes to everything from diabetes to hypertension to the actual death rates? The suicide rate, which originally, if I go back to my training, was at a lower rate for African Americans, is climbing and continues to climb. So clearly there is something changing, there's something different, and it's something that needs to be addressed. So from that standpoint as well, the idea that you have to meet a person where they are, and I don't know if it's the ivory tower or what, but, and I'm not excluding myself in this, by the way, I'm just as guilty. Sometimes we tend to think that everything has to come from the top down, when in reality, the individual interactions that you have within a local community are likely the ones that are going to make the most difference in changing how a person feels about healthcare, about mental health, all of it. Because I know our job for this show is to destigmatize, but boy, oh boy, that's something that still is a huge bugaboo in certain families. And hopefully shows like this continue to move the needle, but it really does come down to talking to people individually and not relying on the crutch of saying, hey, I know that you're feeling this way because of Tuskegee. Well, how do you know that? Really? Could it be just the fact that I couldn't get my license and therefore I don't have identification, but that's the only way certain insurances are willing to accept me? Could it be that I actually am in a transition right now, and because of that, my location has changed, but I don't feel comfortable going to my neighbors asking about certain resources, and therefore I'm not really going where I should? We can't just rely on the sins of the past as the excuse for why we are saying we're not creating a better future. That's really what I'm getting at. So yes, it's a great starting point to acknowledge all the negative things that have happened and maybe created that cross culture. That's not why it stays the way it is, at least not in my clinical opinion, not from what I'm hearing from other people. I still get the Tuskegee story. I definitely do. I get Henrietta Lacks once in a while, and I'm really impressed when people reference that too.
I was going to bring her up.
I get it, but that's not the overwhelming quote unquote majority of the minorities. Okay. So we can't just rely on that. And one of the ideas that's come up, and it was referenced when we did Luke Cage, but I don't think I wanted to at the time say it in this way because I wanted to research it a little more. But true, there's a grassroots format, and it literally is the barbershop intervention, because one of the most common areas in the Black community is barbershops and salons, and doctors actually going in and having some of the tough conversations that people don't like to have. Like, when was the last time you got your cholesterol checked? When's the last time you actually went over with your doctor what your medications were? Because maybe you can get off of them and you don't need them as much. What resources do you need? I don't want to make it sound all negative as if it's accusatory. No, not far from it. Just what's going well in your life? What are the things that you're willing to talk about that you haven't had the opportunity to say to someone outside of your own immediate circle? What are the stigmas that you think still exist, or things that you feel like you can't talk about with other people that don't quite look like you? These are things that if you say it any other way, they become taboo and alienating. And yet, depending on who it's coming from, it can actually be empowering. So I want to bring that up for the people that if that's relevant to you, then by all means, take advantage of it. And if for those of you that say like, well, this has nothing to do with me, maybe not you, but maybe it has to do with someone you know and you didn't even realize it.
I have nothing to add, nothing of substance anyway. These are incredibly difficult conversations, and they're necessary and they're vital. And I hope that one day we can stop having them. But I also know that that day is not likely to be in either of our lifetimes. That's very sad. Maybe in our grandchildren's lifetimes. Maybe. I hope that we can stop having to have some of these discussions. But it always boggles my mind when I hear racism discussed as a problem. It's the only problem I can think of that will just go away if we magically stop talking about it. Everything else, you have to acknowledge the problem. You have to accept that it's real. You have to acknowledge it. And then you have to make steps to determine how to address it. Racism, whether it's the systemic or just the one-on-one, using of the N-word or other horrific language, is the only problem I've ever heard of that it'll just go away if you stop talking about it. Why do you have to drag it into everything? Because it's baked in. Okay? Why is race always a part of politics? Because it's baked into the country from day one. It's like trying to make a lasagna without cheese. Like, it's baked in. It's part of the ingredients. You can't do it without it. It's a shitty analogy. I get it, but God damn it, just.
All right. Now it's your turn. Take a breath. All right. We knew this was going to be intense. We knew this was going to hit some nerves. And this is an example of two people. I know I'm a psychiatrist, but really this is just two guys with, in some ways, very privileged backgrounds, in other ways, different backgrounds. But the bottom line is the fact that you're willing to talk about it this way, the fact that I'm willing to talk about it this way, allows us in a healthy environment to process the types of emotions that, let's be honest, even though we are experiencing our own emotions about it, we still didn't quite go through what people have in generations past. And the fact that the fact that we're even able to have this conversation, and I can, without fear of reprisal, say to the world that this is my brother, that really is one of the most uplifting things that society can imagine. So if we stick to that, then I think we'll be okay.
Yes. And I mean, like, I love you as a brother, as though you were my own, flesh and blood. And even I apologize. And I don't know if I've said this to you, personally or privately. I think I probably have, but I'll say it again. When like we were in high school, it was always he's my best friend. I don't see the color, because I believed in my naivete that was the way to be, that, because I loved you. I still love you so purely, on a friendship level, that I was like, I don't see you as a black man. I don't see color, all that shit.
So if you're going to, I know, but if you're going to say that, then I'm willing to put this on air, because you told me this. As always, I say so much random crap. I don't remember things, but there are a couple of moments in your life that you've told me about. And I do remember them once you tell me. The one that you told me was driving out of your apartment complex, which happened to be very close to a police station. And you were saying every time you drive out of there and there's a car behind you, a patrol car, you wonder, well, are they just doing their thing, or are they actually like following me? And I said, welcome to every day of my life. And I really did kind of mean it as this offhand thing, but you had pointed out to me that for some reason that seemed to stick with you.
It did. Yeah, because my apartment complex was in the middle of the municipal complex, or it was adjacent to it. So basically, to get into the roadway took you either, you wanted to go to the library, to Borough Hall and the police station or my apartment complex. It was all the same road. And I was heading home and there was a cop behind me. That's what it was. I was heading home and I didn't know if he was following me or if he was just going back to the station. And yes, I posted on Facebook and I said, oh, when you don't know if a cop is following you or he's heading back. And you said, welcome to every day of my life. And I was like, son of a bitch. It was like a light bulb went off. And again, that's what I mean when I say my intentions were good in that I see you as a person, but I also acknowledge and apologize for all the times that I said, I don't see you as a black man. I just see you as my best friend, because to do so invalidates all of the stuff that you're describing. And it invalidates everything that you've been through, because to say that means that whiteness is the default.
An apology accepted. I really need to say that. Sorry.
No.
Okay.
I knew you weren't going to accept the apology. You weren't going to be like, oh, this now.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
All right.
I mean, again, we could go on and on about this, but in any case, we're going to get to the skit. And full disclosure, this one was not an easy one to write. It's not going to be an easy one to play. I, for reasons that should be clearly obvious by now, am not going to be playing Isaiah Bradley in this. And this was an idea that I had in the process of writing this. I said, we need an older black man who has clearly experienced some things in his life and seen some stuff. And we need an angle for this that I cannot contribute. And so the part of Isaiah Bradley is going to be played by Doc's father, a man that I am proud to call Pops.
Yeah. He's been a fan of ours since day one. And I know there are parts of this that kind of echo just life in general. I mean, obviously he was never a super soldier, things like that, but there have been some men on that side of the family that were in the military and, saw some things, and that includes two of his brothers. And then in terms of caring for someone that just mentally has had changes over the years, that's something that he continues to experience. So from that standpoint, full disclosure, this is going to be recorded in a separate time period, but that is what he's going to do. And I'm just apologizing ahead of time. I'm going to record this right now, at least my lines. And there may be some starts and stops, and I do not envy Anthony editing this, but I will gladly do my best. And that's...
So without further ado, here's what happens when we get Isaiah Bradley on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, Isaiah. I'm Dr. Issues.
You the doctor?
Yep.
You the doctor?
Oh, I get... Yeah, I really am. Full school, same work as everybody else.
More work, right.
It didn't feel that way. Times change, man.
Not for me.
Why?
I like people smiling. They're nice. They say hi. Some cry. Faith says they're happy too. I get mixed up and sad.
Well, are you sad now?
No, you're nice. So you make me happy too.
I do my best.
Me too. Do you like comics?
Sure.
These are my favorite.
You still have some of the originals? That's amazing.
I don't show them because it makes Faith sad. She says I don't understand. I have comics because anybody can do anything.
Well, that's true in comics. I think Faith is worried about real stuff.
I know. I don't want to go to jail again. I'm sorry.
You didn't do anything wrong. I made a mistake.
I beat people up. I went to jail. They were going to kill me. I had to.
Well, what you're doing is catastrophizing.
What's that?
I don't mean to sound too heady, but that's when you only think of the baddest stuff that can happen.
Everyone died and I went to jail.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm doing this wrong.
Can you fix me, doctor?
Isaiah, there's nothing to fix. You did the right thing. Everybody else was wrong and bad.
Faith is good. Captain America is good. You're a doctor, so you're good.
Thank you. But not every doctor was good. Most doctors are good. I think. We all try to do better. I promise.
Sometimes my head hurts. I miss Sarge. I miss a lot of people. The new people only stay a little while. Are you staying?
I can't stay. I have to go see other patients and then I go home.
Do you have to give me any needles? I hate needles.
No, I don't have to give any needles.
Okay, I like you.
I like you too, Isaiah. You're a hero.
Then why did I go to jail? Heroes don't go to jail.
Isaiah, I don't know how much of this you'll understand, but you were set up to fail. Everything that was done to you, everything that those people did was because they didn't want you to win, and you won anyway. You saved people. You are a hero, and nothing anyone else says or does can take that away from you.
Thank you. I wish they didn't take my blood or my friends.
I wish so too, buddy, but there's a lot of family around now, right?
Yeah, they bug me so much. Always try to take my stuff. They don't listen. I tell them no. And they all get scared. Then they cry. They cry. I don't like crying.
I don't either. Is there a way we could make them happy?
A whole lot of snacks. I keep them hidden just for the kids. You can have them too, if you want.
No, thanks. I'm not sure there's anything else I can do, really. I have to admit my limits. I get starstruck by you. Just like with Steve.
You know Captain America too?
Yeah,
he gave me his costume. I wore it.
I know. It's your costume too, Isaiah. He shares it with you.
You want to wear it? It's still good.
No, that's okay. I'm not. I don't. Oh, can I just take a picture with you? You know, that'll make me feel good, like everybody else.
Okay.
This is the type of thing that makes me remember why I became a doctor in the first place. Sometimes all I can do is listen, Isaiah.
You do that a lot.
More than you know. Thank you, Isaiah. It has been an honor to meet you.
Are you going to come back?
I hope so.
Okay, I'm sad. You're going, but happy you'll come back. We'll play a game. Bye.
Folks, we said at the top this was going to be an emotionally heavy episode. I think this is heavier than Roy Harper. I think we finally have an episode that outdid Roy Harper. I knew at some point we were going to get there, but I didn't know what it was going to be.
Yeah.
But this is it.
Yeah. And I wish I had other words besides the idea that I just want people to be able to get something out of this. Writing this was one of the most difficult things that I've ever done, and it's because it invokes so many different things for me, professionally, personally, and I'm used to I'm used to the idea that I'm supposed to bring people some sense of positivity, and Matt just hit on something that I guess is it brings what I hope it would. The idea that even when situations aren't the way that you want them to be, that doesn't mean that you can't find a way to make them better.
He said on the live stream that actually felt a little uplifting by the end, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt.
Yeah.
That's kind of what we were going for.
Yeah. Well, that may not have been the way it started for me because it was just so difficult to get through much of it. But what invoked the last part, basically, well, first of all, is just my style. I can never be one tone too long in anything. It's why I'm not a novel writer. But also, I was thinking of Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, in the sense that I can't possibly say to myself, if he's enjoying his time, then there's no reason for me not to celebrate with him, no matter what I'm processing about it. And that's the thing, because there's no, even if it's a spoiler, that last section, that last panel with Captain America with him, that really is what it was all about. It's just the idea that these two men, in their own paths, their own way, they made it. They survived, and they were able to have a moment. And you don't have to be upset that it didn't happen the way you wanted it to, or that, you know, the good times are over. You can be glad that the great times happen.
Yeah. It's not easy to find the joy, to find the silver lining, to find the upside to things. And I know as a person who often tries to do that, sometimes pathologically so, that I have to find the optimist. I have to find the positive in things. It's exhausting. It is tiresome, and it can wear you down, and it can beat you down, which is not the point of trying to find the optimism. But when you do find it, particularly when you find it organically, or when you find it unexpectedly, that is a high and a wondrous feeling that words cannot describe, and that I hope that everyone gets the opportunity to experience at least once or twice in your life, to have that moment of joy and optimism, and to have that sense of reinvigoration of spirit, because we get bogged down with the day to day so often. And I know I'm sort of just like rambling here, but we get bogged down in our everyday lives. It just happens, especially now in the midst of this pandemic and everything. I mean, 14 months going on lockdown. I had a conversation with my wife earlier, and I was like, I haven't really left the house meaningfully for any extended period of time in 14 months. And it weighs on me, and it has irrevocably changed me, even moving forward. Even if they were announced tomorrow, COVID is cured and everybody can go back to the way things were, I have been irrevocably changed. And so trying to find the uplifting and trying to find the positive in things has not been easy as of late. And even having this discussion, which again, we talk some really heavy shit in this episode. There's no two ways about it. But knowing that, sorry, my concentration just got broken because Matt says that's good because we're never going back. Perfect timing, Matt. Perfect timing. Thank you for breaking me. But, just having that reinvigoration and knowing that we can have these discussions, and that hoping that somebody listening to this episode has just a better understanding of things and a better appreciation for things, and maybe has a conversation that they weren't expecting to have, or goes out and learns something that they didn't have. If we taught you something in this episode, then we did our job, and it's worth it for me, and I'm fairly certain it's worth it for Doc as well.
Damn right.
So recommended reading for this episode is obviously Truth, Red, White, and Black. Go out, Marvel Unlimited, find the trade, read it, get some insight, and then read stuff. Learn about the things that they didn't teach you in history class, in high school, in grammar school. Learn about the Tulsa Massacre. Learn about the Tuskegee experiment. Learn about Henrietta Lacks. Learn about Fred Hampton. Learn about these names of these pioneers of civil rights. Learn about the folks that they don't teach you in the whitewashed versions of U.S. history. And it was something that Matt had said earlier. He said, I despise public education for everything I had to find out about history on my own. Read the stuff they don't teach you in the history books.
Yeah. And okay, so I just realized, because I'm not going to have a pun this week. And well, if we're going to go all in, I'm willing to go all in. So there are two names that really come to mind that outside of my family that ended up shaping me from an early age. One of them is Dr. Williams. And what I mean by that is Daniel H. Williams, the first person to actually successfully complete cardiac surgery, which put me on this bent that I was going to be a cardiac surgeon, African American. And the other one is, and I don't mean this in the political sense, please, people, so don't get into that with me, because I read his book, Ben Carson, Gifted Hands, Think Big. He's a neurosurgeon, pediatric neurosurgeon. He ran for president, didn't win. It doesn't matter whether or not I was voting for him or not. I'm not getting into politics about it. The reason I'm bringing it up is because he was another person that was inspirational to me. The thing is, and why some of this stuff was hitting me so hard, is because Daniel Williams was dead long before I would ever get the opportunity to meet someone like that. And I would think in my life, like, wow, if I could ever go back in time, I would love to meet that person. I got to shake Ben Carson's hand. He gave the speech at my med school's graduation at the request of our student body. So the fact that I was able to actually meet that man and just shake his hand and have that moment, that is one of the most amazing things that I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. So that's why I said that last panel with Captain America, the idea that someone that is your hero, your icon, and even if Ben Carson doesn't even know who I am, the idea that I at least got to share that one moment with him at a point where I could actually start to call myself doctor. That is just something that will always carry me forward no matter what's going on in my day. And seeing the reaction that people have to me, all of it. And to see a character like this and thinking to myself, if instead of it being Ben Carson, if it had been Dr. Williams, and in that circumstance, with all the things that he must have gone through, would I have even been able to be there with him? Or would I have been one of the people that was cast away and he was the only survivor?
Oof. That.
I hope people now understand why this was tough for me in so many ways.
Yeah. And here I thought we were out of the woods with the emotion. I was like, oh, we're wrapping up. This will be fine.
Like I said, I don't have a pun. What the hell do you expect?
So upcoming episodes, then comic book death, as suggested by Matt.
Which actually is probably going to be pretty light, knowing the way I am.
And knowing the novella that Matt wrote for his submission, there's a lot of material to talk about, and we're going to have fun with that. And then we're going to talk to our friend Erica Schultz about her new book that's coming out, So that'll be released in a couple of weeks. And then Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy and that series of characters. So those are the upcoming episodes. I don't envision there will be nearly as much lumps and throats for those episodes as there were in this one. I hope not. I mean, maybe Erica will tell us a really sad story. I don't know. I can't promise that. But in any case, you can find all of our episodes on our website, capesonthecouch.com. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Capes on the Couch. As we said at the top of the show, thanks again to our new patron, Brittany. You can go to patreon.com/Capes on the Couch and subscribe to unlock additional content and some good stuff. And that's all I've got. So please take care of each other and be good. And yeah. Doc, anything else?
Oh, no.
Pun or otherwise?
Oh, no. I am all tapped out on this one.
The same here. For Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.